Hello and welcome to Wake and Jake. Myself, Jolly Olive is back, and Big Baby David. As we're going to circle around the league, we're going to check in on Jolly's Mets, see how he's feeling. Maybe get a team he's hot to trot on that the people aren't talking about. We're going to check in on some of the deadline ads and how they're looking, and much more. Coming up. Okay. What's going on? I hope everybody had a good weekend. I am still Swiss cheese from Fanatics Fest. Pretty good time. We can walk through some of that. Pretty cool sports event. They rolled it out. Interested to see how it evolves. Do they make money off of it? Are they losing tons of money? Is it worth the exposure? I have no idea. If someone has the business maths, please reach out to us. But it was a good time, and we could talk about that a little bit. For now, Jelly Olive, how are you? My tear-making friend.
I'm good, Jake. Yeah, it's been a little bit. I think since we did the triple threat. Me, you, fool.
Oh, wow, that was the last one?
It's since then. I'm pretty good. I had a nice weekend. I was at Fanatics Fest on Friday. It was absolutely bananas. We were on the main stage for 2 hours, I think, before Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson, which is a ridiculous place to put us in the schedule. But we had a great time. The crowd was awesome. A bunch of people said, hey. I got to do some pictures and sign some balls, which is really neat. Like I've actually accomplished anything in life. And you were there the whole weekend, and I can hear it in your voice a little bit. You were out
sure
there in the weeds.
I think I lost it during the initial 2-hour thing we did on the main stage because we couldn't hear ourselves that well.
Yeah.
But apparently the crowd heard everything really well. But I was yelling because I was like, I don't think they can hear us. And then I checked with everyone backstage, and they're like, no, the audio's incredible.
They said
so I was
you're
like,
yelling
okay.
too loud.
So why am I yelling?
Yeah.
Just to lose my voice for the whole weekend as I talk to people the entire time.
Yep.
But we'll circle back on a little more of that. Jolly, let's start on your team. The New York Mets.
Wow.
And maybe this will lead into another conversation about I'll call them the shadow baseball teams. We talk about the shadow strike zone sometimes when it comes to pitching and getting calls. What was looking like a potential spicy wild card on each side is looking a little less spicy. The Red Sox are 3.5 games back of the Kansas City Royals, and then it's the Mariners at 5.5.
Yeah.
Seattle, we have a hatred, kind of mutual right now. It should be so much better. It shouldn't be like this. And Mariners fans agree, I think, for the most part. Because hitting matters. That's been my whole thing for a couple years now. On the National League side, technically the closest team from being out to in of a wild card spot are your New York Mets, who are 2 games back of the Atlanta Braves, who just lost young, thick Austin Riley for 6-8. With the Giants 4 games back, and then you're getting into the NL Central teams that have, if you think I have a dislike for how the Mariners are operating, any team that's not the Brewers in the Central, boy, you've made me boil, as John Boy said last night talking about his Yanks. So start off with your Mets. We're 64-40 64-60 as we record this. We added a little bit at the deadline. Jesse Winker, who I think will be brought up in a little bit.
Sure.
Where are we at with the Mad Lads in Flushing?
Yeah, we're in a weird spot, I think. They had a pretty gnarly 10-game roader, not in terms of the teams they played, but in terms of the travel they had to go through. They had to go to Anaheim, and then for a day they went to St. Louis, then they went to Colorado, and then they finished in Seattle. And most people know about that Seattle series. They got swept. Sunday Night Baseball blowout, and then Seattle went right back to where they were right after sweeping us, which was just losing games they should be winning. I'm sorry, Seattle fans, but you guys handed our ass to us that weekend, so I still got a little resentment there. But since coming home, kind of disappointing. They went 3-3 against the A's and Marlins. The last A's game and the last Marlins game was incredibly tough. 2 one-run losses where the bullpen kind of let the team down. We didn't hit in certain spots, and I think they're keeping afloat right now. They're 7-9 in August. They could easily be 9-7, and you feel better about it. But I think a lot of Mets fans are ringing that panic bell, that alarm bell of, we bought the deadline, everyone's laughing at us again, and whatever. They're 2 games out of a playoff spot. No matter how the team looks right now, and I agree that they don't look good. They don't look like they have the same magic that they did the past 2 months. They're 2 games out. And I do feel for Braves fans who just got Michael Harris back into the fold, had that grand slam. I think they took 3 or 4
Don't feel
on the
for
road.
Braves fans. You're a Mets fan.
Let me I'm just saying.
You're not.
Teams get punched is the point I'm trying to make. And the Mets have gotten punched a little bit recently. They almost lost Nimmo. The MRI came back clean. But their big punch was the Senga injury. And I'm sure you talked at length about it on this show and Talking Baseball. That felt like the apex of the season. Right there.
Grimace, we're winning. Senga's back.
We're hitting grand slams off Morton, 3 homers in an inning. We're up big. The home crowd is sold out. It's packed. It's loud. Senga rolls the calf. And then since then, they've been stumbling. So I'm hoping that they can find some footing. But, this is kind of it, Jake. These next 10 games, it's kind of it. It's 3 with the Orioles at home, 7 on the road, Padres and D-backs. That is your... If you want a tester to find out who you are, the Mets have it in front of them right now.
This is it, and it isn't it. Like you said, Baltimore, San Diego, Arizona. San Diego and Arizona on the West Coast.
Yeah.
They do have the medicine waiting for them in the Chicago White Sox.
That's a scary dose of medicine, though.
No, it's not.
It can be.
No, it's not.
Teams have
They are a historically bad team.
Any team can win any game, Jake.
It's not true. Not that team. Not that team. Although they just took one from the Yanks and they took one from Houston. So
Which is why I'm a
they
little
can take
worried.
one.
You'd like to sweep.
You can't lose the series. You cannot to a historically bad team. What franchise would go in with playoff hopes, play a historically...
Don't do this. Don't invite me on the show.
No, you're right. You're right. That's a little messed up, but everyone knows where they would cast their ballot. Man, I didn't see the schedule. Let's see. San Diego, Cease, Musgrove, King, Perez, who you might hear about.
Oh, yeah.
On the trades. Looks like Erod, Blank, and Gallen. I don't know. That's tough to look at. You have to think 500, which is tricky because this time of year, that's almost going to bring you to September. But with Chicago after that, 500 would be a win, which is scary to think about because 1 or 2 go the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
3 and 7s this time of year. I mean, they could be the end of it. So that is very daunting. Let's see. In September, Boston, Cincy, Toronto, double Philly, with Washington in between. Atlanta, hey, get to September 24th.
Yeah.
Keep it within 3 games by then and see what happens.
The only thing that's I don't think enough people are talking about it because I think there are still Mets believers out there. They're 10 games under 500 against winning teams, and they need to prove it, dude. They didn't mop up against bad teams at home. Now they have to beat good teams, and they haven't been great at that. I think a lot of it is still that really bad May, but a record is a record.
Kind of got to handle Baltimore.
You got to win the series. You got to try.
You kind of got to handle Baltimore. Where are we at with individual Mets players? I know you're pushing this Lindor MVP.
It doesn't need pushing, Jake. He leads the league in WAR.
Okay. Pushing this Lindor MVP narrative. Where are we at with Pistol Pete? Where are we at with McNeil? I know he came out of the break hot. Is he still doing that? I guess this Mets team, when you look back in 2 years, what feelings do you think you're going to feel about them? Heavy question.
That's a good question. I mean, I think a good insight into Mets fandom is how people look at the 19 team, which didn't make the playoffs. I think they won 86 games. People love that team.
Okay.
They banged. I think they won 12 games in a row in August or something. They were a magic team that fizzled at the end because of bad defense and bad bullpen. And right now, the vibe is kind of the same. When they win, they're banging the ball around and hitting homers. That was Pete's first year and Conforto's last year, and everyone was just smacking the cover off the ball. That's what this team looks like right now. And the 2 games most recently that they lost that they really needed were because of their bullpen, which they tried to fix at the deadline, and so far has been mixed results at best. So if it ends the same, I think the vibe will be the same. I think they'll be remembered decently fondly. They had a lot of fun in June and July, but you want that to kind of mean something.
Right.
You want that to not be like, oh, well, all this did was prevent us from selling and setting ourselves up better in the future. You want to get something out of this. And I do still maintain that I think they did the right thing at the deadline, which was buy light, protect your top 20 guys, and, make the roster better. I think Stearns did a good job. But those guys have to produce. And right now, I think Blackburn's been okay, but the rest of them have not really performed. And it's going to be on them, I think, going forward the next 2 weeks.
And I don't think you do know this, but not doing this in a clickbait way.
Sure.
Alonso, where are we at?
Yeah.
Does this feel like it's it? How about that? Like, that's the question, right?
The vibe right now in my head is like, wow, this is the last 6 weeks of Pete Alonso as a Met. And I think a lot of people would disagree with me, and that's super valid. But all you have to do is look at the way Stearns has operated in the past. Like he does not sign corner infielders to big deals. I think he did with Moustakas once, and that was it. I mean, the Brewers find a way at the corner infield spots every year.
Right, but that's also the Brewers. Like,
I agree. You're in a different market now, and I'm interested to see how he treats his first big free agency pool, which is this offseason. But, dude, I mean, he's got the worst batting average with runners in scoring position among qualified players. He's been the worst run producer in the league, if you want to go by that metric. If you're a box score watcher, he looks like he's having a terrific season. He's on pace for 30. He's got an 800 OPS. Like, what more do you want? And the answer,
pace for almost 40.
Yeah.
He would tell you.
I mean, 46 and 118 last year, 40 and 131 the year before. I'm an RBI believer. I like RBIs.
Oh, wow.
I am. And you can come at me all you want and say it's circumstantial. I think RBIs matter, especially when the guy's hitting fourth every day. And right now he's third on the team.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to cut it, especially if he wants to reset the market like he said he was going to last year. So I still think that rejection on the 7 for $158 million or something just hung a dark cloud over him and put a lot of pressure on him, and that stinks. But now you're in the scenario where, your contract year was one of the worst years of your career, even if that's a little unfair to say because he's had a great career. That the vibe for me right now is like, I think I'm in the last 6 weeks of Pete Alonso as a Met, unless he goes on some insane tear and turns the whole narrative around.
This Alonso final, not even a month and a half at this point, 6 weeks or whatever, is going to be fascinating because the OPS right now sits at 800 flat. The OPS plus is 127, which is better than last year. A good September, and all of these numbers will say Pete Alonso on a sheet of paper. I'm sorry about your run production.
Sure.
But that's where the nerds may have put themselves in a corner by saying, well, RBIs, that's not him. Well, you can't control that. Even though you're saying he's been the worst hitter with runners in scoring position, which he can control a little more. I don't... To go away from a guy that seems like a lock for 35 home runs. But if he has a bad month, teams are going to be shy. I'm not going to say he's going to get Confortoed, but like if those numbers come down a little bit, I think he's going to have a good last month.
And dude, like the other side of the coin is your guy, Mark Vientos. He's looked amazing, but his defense is like a legitimate concern. I think he's looked okay, but if I'm the Mets,
right,
and I see Matt Chapman having the year that he's having, I can put Vientos at first base and I can get the best defender in the league at third base.
I thought we don't pay corner infielders.
Maybe we do.
Would you rather have Chapman over Alonso?
Oh. Well, it just depends who Mark Vientos is. It depends who he is. Is Brett Beatty still in the equation?
No.
I don't think so.
That's a fun game. If it's free agency, same contract.
Whoa, same contract.
Same contract. Is Chappie older?
I think Alonso is going to ask for more and maybe get more.
It's interesting because, like you said, Matt Chapman is going to outwar him in a big way. Matt Chapman is at least going to provide good defense at a primo position. And his OPS is in
Chapman's older.
Chapman's 2 years older. So what if it was the same? If it was $25 million a year for 6 years of Chapman or 7 of Alonso?
6 for 150, steep. But that's probably what the price is going to be. 7 years for Alonso is scary, dude. Like that.
Meaty.
I would go, right now. I would go Chapman, but there's
a good argument for Chapman.
There's a Christian Walker lane too. Like this is why I'm convinced it's not going to happen because the Mets have options, dude. Like the market of things that they need this offseason is pretty stacked. Like starting pitching and corner infield. So like they have options.
See you in Seattle, Pete. Quote Jolly Olive on it.
I think. Oh, you calling Seattle?
Man, talk about a signing that, in a way, I'm not going to say I feel bad for Pete. But I will say stadium and team will very much affect how we feel about Pete Alonso.
Definitely.
If Pete Alonso signs with Houston, we're all going to go fuck.
Yeah.
We just gave them 42 homers a year.
Maybe more. Because like if he goes
short porch and left,
He can just
even
hit
like
pop-ups.
can go Oppo pretty easy
like what's the thing we've been saying
in their
about
lineup.
Paredes with the Cubs, like the pulled fly ball thing, like that applies to Alonso too. If they want to go get him, like that's a factor. You know,
Yank some balls.
He goes to the Cubs. Me and the Cubs front office have our differences right now. And like, dude, if he signs with Seattle, that's a big boy ballpark.
God,
and
Houston
a lot
makes
of
so much
guys have
sense
gone
there.
there and had a bad time.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's gonna get paid, and it is a weird one that, especially for a power hitter like him, that whatever team it is, like again, like the Cincinnati Reds probably not in play, but that's a hitter's ballpark, gap to gap, pretty easy. Couple more balls fall. You go to one of those not hitter friendly places. Interesting to see, and I'll root for your Mets, Jal.
Thanks, man.
Go catch the Braves. Don't
man.
feel their pain. That's
Wow. No sympathy.
nothing. Hey, welcome to Sports Talk.
Hey.
What's a team you like? Hey, who's calling?
Down the line.
No, I guess, do you have, when you're looking around the league, whether it's Jolly's sexy pick, whether it's just like, these are the guys, who's the team you're drinking their Kool-Aid right now?
I liked what you said before, like shadow team. Oh, that was neat. That was a neat little Jakey spin. It's a good question, and I'm going to include teams that are currently in it too, because honestly, dude, a lot of the teams that are not in it right now, it kind of makes sense. Like I'm not buying into a lot of comeback potential for a ton of teams.
This was Dalton. Dalton texted me Saturday late night because I was watching games and UFC. I'm a UFC junkie.
Nice. Okay.
I can't shake it.
He's got a
I don't
diverse
know.
palate.
I'll maybe circle back on that. We'll see. Great fights. Wow. Mano a mano. Dalton was like, he hit me with who's a team that we're not thinking about that can get back in the mix. I literally think the only team that checks that box is the San Francisco Giants.
I was thinking about
if
them.
they went nuts. But I want to go, I'm a step past that because I think the American League is technically wide open / Houston. Hello. The National League, I mean, the powers are there and the non-traditional powers. Like the Snakes won the NL last year, and they've been great for a while. Got Tampa this weekend. San Diego Padres are starting to like fulfill their prophecy, while the Dodgers and Phillies exist with a fallen warrior of the Braves, still there. You might see Cy Young winner Chris Sale in it. So I guess that's where I think the board is open, that I don't want you to necessarily live in the edge of the wild card. Even if someone says like, I like this big boy over the other big boys right now, that's powerful.
I like that you brought up that last part because I want to do one from each league. And I'll go big boy stuff first. I mean, I don't think it's outlandish or unfair at all to say that the Brewers have been the most consistent National League team, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like all three of those top dogs, Phillies, Dodgers, Brewers, they're all 20 games or more above 500. They're all right within each other. Jeff Passan had a good tweet about how like every top team is on pace for like 95 wins.
Yeah.
Like it's the land of opportunity this year, which is exciting and nerve-wracking because there's just a ton of teams that are in it and have like their own lottery ticket. But like poll to poll, has there been a bad Brewers stretch? Like I feel like they've just been fundamentally sound on defense. They've I don't know how they figured out the rotation, because their rotation going into this year and even right now does not look like a playoff team.
Right.
Like, their 4 starter is still Joe Ross, which, like, is just working. No offense to Joe Ross, I'm sorry. But, like, I'm just saying, you look at, the Phillies rotation, the Dodgers with everything they've dealt with. I still think I'd like those names more. But, dude, they've just been getting it done. Like, Willy Adames is quietly having, one of his best years. I think their longest losing streak this season is 3.
Like, their record for the month of July isn't good, but
their longest
2
losing
games
streak is
under
3.
500.
They stumbled
The
in and
rest
out of
have
the
all
break.
been good.
Yeah.
They stumbled in and out of the break, but
So
nobody
probably
else in
like
the
that
Central.
2-week stretch is
Right, they're 11-5 in
going to be
August.
the worst you'll find.
They're playing good teams. They played the Dodgers. They just played the Guardians. They swept the Braves. So, like, right now and I do this every fucking year, dude.
Whoa.
I do it every year.
Cussing.
No. Go back to
What the heck?
my...
Swear.
Sorry? Go back to
Sorry,
my
Dan.
4th month working at John Boy Media.
Month 4.
You called me up on Talking Baseball. You said, who's your World Series pick? And I picked the Brewers, and they won the first game against the Braves, and they got swept. And then last year on my own channel, I said the Brewers are going to shock everybody. They're going to go on some crazy run, and they got dumped in the wild card round by your frickin' Snakes. And right now, I feel it happening to me again. I like the Brewers a lot. I think they're consistent. I think they're a solid team. I think they're the most, like, cohesive roster. And I want to believe it, especially with the new manager, maybe new Juju. But they just break my heart every year. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess at some point in September, I'm going to have to start exploring matchups a little more and feel... right now, the Brewers' lefties scare me. Terang's offensive numbers have gotten to a not good place. Yelly being out for the year.
That hurts.
That their righties are great, and I'm sure their righties hit righties. Like William Contreras, Willy Adames, it is whatever. But I do think there's something come the postseason that there's something to baseball that, hey, if that nasty righty is coming out of your bullpen and he has a wipeout slider, that's been tough for every righty hitter in baseball history. And yeah, we've all kind of been a little bit hurt by the Brewers, and there's something dirty about it. They trade Corbin Burns before the season, and yet they feel more powerful than they've ever felt.
Yeah.
I don't know. The comp for them in the AL has been the Guardians. Both teams kind of lack starting pitching. Both teams have amazing bullpens. I think both teams play. I think the secret is both of those organizations can tap into whatever bullpen they really want. Go look who's mowing guys down in the Brewers' pen. Hudson's
having an insane year.
And a crazy year, like an all-time reliever year. Jared Koenig.
Sure.
The guys that they've tapped into down there, Nick Mears, trade deadline ad from the Rocks, they can tap into guys in the bullpen that they can almost ensure they'll be solid down there, and they play great defense. And I think there's something in that formula that's going to win you a chunk of baseball games. That when you've got the offensive performance that they have from a few guys, Willie, and Yelly when he was out there, Jackson Chourio turned it on for a little bit.
Now, Gary
again, another righty.
Gary having a nice year.
All righty. So, alrighty then. So, I don't know. I understand it with the Brewers. It just has the same sense of Brewers.
Prove it.
Which maybe that's rude, and I don't know. It's going to be a testament to how does this postseason feel in the NL, because every other team is kind of coming to the party with their battle scars.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even if the Braves are the skeleton of themselves, they're
Still
the
the
Atlanta
Braves,
Braves. A lot of them have bling in their closet. The Dodgers are starting off with 3 MVPs. And some big salaries. The Phillies were literally made to be a postseason team. The Diamondbacks won the NL last year. The Padres were supposed to be this team that, everyone else is going to be showing up to the dance and the stretch limo and the party Hummer and everything else, and the Brewers are going to pull up in that same, Chevy Suburban and be like, hey, we're here. That I don't know. It's tough for me to buy in for the postseason. because I believe in what they do in the regular season, and maybe this is really dumb because maybe the postseason is a crapshoot. Maybe it's less of a crapshoot than we think, and maybe the postseason turns into more Jimmys and Joes. But then you could point at the D-backs last year that they feel like the loophole currently, that maybe the Brewers are just looking for their loophole season, and maybe it's this year.
And, like, it's so stupid that we're, like, because the reason I'm commending them is, like, they've been consistent.
Right.
And, like, not a lot of teams can say that this year. Like, they've just been consistent for the entire year. But that almost, like, counts against them in the playoffs because, like, the past 2 years, even 3 years, it's just been about what team is the hottest at the end of September going into the playoffs. So if you're the Brewers, it's not about, winning 6 of every 10 or winning 5 of every 9. It's about getting real hot in the last 2 weeks and just hoping you can carry that momentum. Or, if I'm the Brewers, it's about not being the third division team. Because that's kind of what boned them last year.
That fight's becoming...
They have a chance to be a top 2 seed, and I really do think that makes a difference for them. Whereas, like, if the Dodgers fall into the 3 or the Phillies do, suddenly they're in dangerous territory because they're more built for the 5-game set, the 7-game set, rather than the 3-game set. So it's interesting.
Dodgers might not be right now.
I know.
They're entering a weird spot. Yeah. For any true... baseball losers out there, hi, subscribe. Man, I'll tell you what, I click around Baseball Reference a lot. Go look at the Brewers team page and just look at their top 24 players all time. It pops up with their pictures. There's a lot of cats that I am not familiar with. And just a lot of silly pictures. Gorman Thomas.
Excuse me.
Gorman Thomas has a picture that's hard to... Chris Bosio has a little bit of meat on the bone. And I don't know, for some reason it looks like Jonathan LaCroix's picture got taken place in 1986.
Yeah, what is up with that?
And that hurts my soul a little bit.
With that?
Get a little... BBD, give the people a little scroll of these Brewers beauties.
Middle, bottom row.
For everyone on the YouTube.
My heart.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm spoiled or... the other teams I check out, but some of these names, even my guy, Teddy Higuera.
I just clicked on his page.
The 5th most WAR in Brewers history. And me and Teddy don't have a relationship yet, but we're about to.
Kind of looks like fully grown me with no facial hair. Is that crazy?
Teddy Higuera from Los Mochis, Mexico. And it looks like he was just an electric factory, and then maybe his arm fell off.
Number 18, Giovanni Gallardo. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to be rude to anyone because I had a moment on Talkin Yanks last night I'm not proud of. But Gorman Thomas is the gentleman with the mustache and hair going everywhere. And then even Chris Bosio next to him. That's one of those guys... For years, I think people outside of baseball were rude to guys like Chris Bosio who balled out. So I actually want a Chris Bosio apology.
Hell yeah.
From anyone that was rude to him. Okay, so you mentioned NL. You want to believe in the Brewers at least.
I do.
Couple big Gorman Thomas years.
Yeah, obviously. Is he Nolan Gorman Thomas?
Gorman Thomas.
What
39 homers in 82.
What are you seeing in the American League?
Oh, I'm seeing talk of the town is the Astros. They're back. Oh, and they are. Like they're going to be the AL winner. We all know.
What was that?
Sorry. Pause.
You're right.
You know what team has not had a losing month this year, and I never would have guessed it?
The Kansas City Royals.
If you have talked about it on Talking Baseball.
The Detroit Pistons.
Minnesota Twins. I've kind of just been
There's a Twins discussion, and it stinks.
They got an ugly start. Like, they went 7-13. Yes. It was bad. I don't think anybody was writing them off, but it was sort of like, oh, what's going on? This is supposed to just kind of be your division that you run with. I fully think they're going to catch the Guardians. I think that, like, in the full 162, and, like, we're starting to see them fade a little bit. I think it's down to 2 games now, their lead. Yeah, 2-game lead. I just believe in Twins talent a little bit, and they're doing this without, like, a good Pablo Lopez season, which I think they were fully counting on. Joe Ryan's hurt again, and their pitching development is starting to come through. Like, their guys have been Bailey Ober and Simeon Woods-Richardson.
Nightmare.
the nightmare. I'm really glad the Mets got to dodge him in that series. I like what they've been doing. Their Achilles heel has always kind of been their bullpen. It's still kind of true. And then keeping the guys on the field healthy. They lost Correa. They lost Buxton. I don't know, man. Maybe it's a little bit of AL Centralitis of like the recent history and also the fact that I absolutely love Carlos Santana. Just everything about him.
Ooh.
I love him. I just think they're going to creep up and probably swipe the division. And I'm curious because I want them to they got the monkey off their back last year. They won a playoff series. They won a playoff game.
Yeah.
And they were competitive with Houston. I want them to build off it, and I really do think they can. But a big part of that is, I think, staying atop the Central. But it is cool that right now we have 3 AL Central teams in the mix, because that has that ever been the case in the 2020s? I don't think it has. It's a nice change of pace, but the Twins right now, I got my eye on them.
Yeah, there's some Twins stats since they got off to their rough start. So I think it's the end of April. It's like April 22nd or something. They're on a 100-win pace.
Is that wow? Jeez.
So again, that's taking out 4 weeks of the season that they've been kind of that 100-win team that doesn't exist this year. Jom kind of opened up my eyes to this stat initially. The record against teams over 500. It does matter.
Oh, yeah.
For the teams there.
That's there.
The Twins are 29-37.
That's real.
That's tough. The other, hey, if anyone is looking for something on the Houston Astros, they still struggle in that department. They're 26-30 against those teams. Again, I think when did their schedule happen is probably more important at this point.
Sure.
Houston also a losing record against lefties. So them and the Yankees have that in common. But they traded for a lefty starting pitcher at the deadline. God.
Segue?
I can already see it. Yeah, I just think we're at an interesting point where there's about to be a month of baseball is going to happen that's going to dictate a lot of things. It's going to dictate your playoff rotation. It's going to dictate who kicks to the bullpen. It's going to dictate how we're feeling about a lot of teams. But no real traditional powers right now that you hammer in the table. They are the favorite.
Yeah.
Like Houston, I think they're back to being like the technical favorite.
Just out of fear, really.
I mean, of the
And they
first
played well.
place teams, they've played like the most well for the most long.
Since May 1st, I think they have the best record. Since May 8th, they have the best ERA and the best OPS.
Damn.
Good combo.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Good recipe. And I don't know if you know this, but some of their guys have been there before.
And they've done that.
Yeah.
Yankees 13-19 versus left-handed starting pitchers. Sure you won't feel that. Framber and Kikuchi.
That's
Josh Hader.
The
in
good
bullpen.
news is on the AL side, that might be the one team you're really scared of, but we'd be scared anyway.
Hey, we were gonna
Feels like a hole.
we're gonna be scared of you no matter what. You can't hurt us anymore. We're already broken.
We're not any more scared that you guys have 2 lefties and one that's really, really killed us.
It's emotional.
It's also the same conversation applies here. Like any one of those 3 division leaders could end up the 3 seed. Like there's no clear cut. Like 'cause if Houston keeps on their pace, they're going to catch up in no time. I think they're like 3.5 games back of the other division leaders. They'll make up that ground in 6 weeks. So like
If they
one
keep
of those
going,
teams
they're
will fall
in
into the wild
range.
card round. And the last thing you want to do is give Houston the bye on top of everything else and of them getting back into the things. If they also get the bye, I feel like they're just the AL favorite at full stop.
Yeah. It's hard to argue against it. Jolly, full disclosure.
Yeah,
This room's pretty warm.
a little bit.
Been a busy couple days. I'll let you cook on some deadline ads, whatever you need to let out on your heart.
Oh, I like that.
The good and the bad, or the good or the bad.
I mean, it was an eventful deadline, right? Like a lot of trades,
A lot of
happened.
transactions.
And we're about 15, 16 games now of sample that we can really look at and see the impact. I don't know, man. Like, I feel like the narrative of like all these teams are on pace for 95 wins, like it's anybody's game. A contributing reason to that is because no deadline acquisition was a huge splash. Like none of them.
Zach Eflin.
I wanted him. Real
He's been
bad.
great.
I wanted him real bad on my Mets, especially with that extra year of control. We'll start there. I think Zach Eflin is a good starting place. I think that was one of the better moves made at this year's deadline. The Orioles now have him for next year as well with their looming rotation questions. He's been big for them, and the Orioles have been a weird team, man. I constantly joke that whenever the Yankees win, the Orioles win. Whenever the Yankees lose, the Orioles lose because it's sort of a handshake agreement. Dude, they had like a bad July. Like they had a really like pretty 12-13. I don't think speaks to their performance in July because they were barely scraping out wins and they were losing games they needed to win. That Zach Eflin in there as a stopper for them in just 4 starts so far has been absolutely massive. I think that's really changed the outlook on their season because without Zach Eflin, you're really starting to rely on guys like Albert Suarez, who they have leaned on.
It's been great.
And he's been great. But, you know, those stories.
That feels differently.
Yeah, they have like sort of a magic attachment to them that could fizzle at any moment. You can't rely on that kind of thing. And then I think they're really feeling things in the bullpen too. Like Kimbrel, I think, has been what you'd expect, but not having Felix Bautista changed everything for them, I think, from the get-go. So that acquisition, I think, is I would say it's like top 3 right now in terms of like immediate impact, long-term impact, and playoff impact because he's now probably your game 2 starter. You get Burns, you get Eflin, and maybe Suarez, maybe Dean Kramer, but it helps.
Looking like Suarez, 17 innings clean.
Put yourself in the scenario where the Orioles finish in second place, Yankees win the division. They get the bye. Cool. Orioles are in the wild card round. Without Eflin, it's Burns, Suarez, Kramer. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we're waiting for Gray Rod updates, but he's out.
He's out right now. If you lose game 1 with Burns, the season's over.
Oh, jolly.
I don't think that's crazy to say. With Eflin, I think you give yourself a pretty good chance, which is why I really wanted him on my team. But that's okay. I'm looking across the numbers here. You mentioned Kikuchi has been really good. That was a trade that kind of got blasted when it happened and still has the chance to age poorly.
Right.
But the guy has been real good since he got to Houston, and now you got that whole lefty problem with them. I want to get the strikeout numbers. He went 11-8 in his first 2 starts. Hasn't been devouring innings, but that's kind of what they needed. They need premium starting pitching because their whole thing is the bullpen, dude. It's supposed to be once you get to the 7th inning, we win the game. So if Kikuchi's only going 5 2/3, that's supposed to be fine.
In the playoffs, that's incredible.
In the playoffs, that's fantastic. You take that every day of the week. So those 2 guys, I think, have been the big ticket starters. And then, dude, like the bats have just been quiet across the board. Like Jazz was the exciting one, but he's hurt. Yeah. I think he's going to come back after the minimum, right?
That's what he said.
And I believe him, I think.
I believe him.
I don't know if I believe the Yankees, because they're weird with injuries.
New team motto.
All the time. Outside of him, you know, where would the Braves be without Jorge Soler, who's been, you know, mashing the cover off the ball since coming back? But it's really, you know, the top-heavy pitching and a couple bats, and everything else has been just kind of keeping teams either where they were or, honestly, actively hurting teams.
Yeah, it is neat checking in on these bullpen guys because, I mean, they've, in fact, had more impact at this point. You're looking at A.J. Puck's pitching 10 games.
Yeah.
Adam Scott.
Wow.
Golf or actor. For the Padres, I think they've pitched in a combined like 15, 16. So it's like
look at the runs those teams went on.
It's an impact.
Yeah.
Like that's a massitive impact. Sir Anthony Dominguez in the back of the Orioles bullpen.
True. Didn't even mention him.
And then don't want to land the ship here, but the Red Sox added a couple bullpen guys that have been having a tough go.
Luis Garcia's been struggling, yeah.
Luis Garcia's felt like a trick of sorts. And yet, just a reminder, Jorge Soler, career 900 OPS on the Atlanta Braves. Career 794 everywhere else. And dude, good on. He's playing right field for them. That's actually hurting his WAR numbers, which I looked and that right field at Truist ain't small. And they were playing the Rockies, and I saw him. That's a massive outfield to cover. Welcome to Atlanta. You're running, Pop.
Yeah. Get on your horse.
Insane. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I do think there's something to that instant impact. Like you talked about the teams that went on winning streaks. AJ Puck saved their butt a couple times, couple games. All these bullpen guys that have been contributing, and that matters. At the same time, I was laughing today on Talking Baseball. If Sir Anthony Dominguez blows an Orioles playoff game, like the Dombrowski God people are going to come back out.
Oh, yeah.
Or vice versa. If Philly has bullpen struggles and Dominguez and Soto are doing something for the Orioles, there will be some loud noises from Philly fans for the first time in a while. Although they're loud, and Shelfie's pretty loud.
He got a little loud.
When he kicks in, he gets loud.
Oh,
He
yeah.
can be loud.
He's powerful.
I mean, you guys did his little, peek inside the event, but you guys were doing Harper versus Trout on stage. I saw genuine upset reactions from Shelfie. He wanted to get involved, and he was just on the sidelines, and I was like,
feeling it.
I felt the passion coming from him.
Chris Rose kind of dunked on me in that segment. People aren't talking about that enough.
Rosie can sneaky do that sometimes. Like, he'll play both sides, but then all of a sudden he'll just swerve on you. It's like, oh.
The question was bigger impact on the game.
Yeah.
I think it was Trout Harper. I was the only Troutist up there.
And I agreed with you.
And then, the Harper boys, Jom, Trev, and then Chris Rose at the end went with the dunk of like, he's got hair and he plays well. I thought about chiming in with one more piece of information that I felt get left out. From 2012 to 2021, if you asked a baseball person, hey, who's the best player in the game? They would have said Mike
You weren't
Trout.
allowed to say someone else.
For a decade, that was the answer. So, yeah, I mean, what Harper's doing is Philly is great. It's electric. I love Harper. I've said many times I wish the Yankees brought in Bryce Harper because they need a little Bryce Harper. Impact on the overall game. I see why it's a fun question. Sure. And the kids are
It's a
copying
conversation.
stance and swag, and Trout has missed a lot in the last couple years, but there was also a decade before that where one of the most asked questions in baseball was answered with one name.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Not like I've thought about that all weekend. Chris Rose. Jolly, I kind of have to roll. Told Jess I would be home after days of working. The weekend. For some, not us. Thank you for hopping on.
Absolutely.
Slightly impromptu. Any teasers? What's coming? Jolly video?
Nothing concrete yet, which is
Okay.
weird for me on a Monday
John
because usually
Kruk.
the script is done by now.
Usually by this point, you've got what the video will be.
I've done a little bit of notes here and there, but no, I mean, Saturday there will be an upload, so look forward to that.
Pedro
and,
Martinez?
that's a layup, Jake. I don't hit
Okay.
layups. I take mid-range twos, deep twos.
Joe Johnson, everyone.
Yes, baby.
Everyone go check out Jolly Olive, JM Baseball, his channel, anywhere the John Boy Media is sold. Hey, I think your rival should be here on Wednesday, Foolish Baseball.
Wow, he's coming in.
We'll see. Not here,
Not physically.
But-
I don't care
in
about
spirit.
that.
Okay.
Can't do anything. I don't like
Beebs, tell him about Uncle Dan.
Wake and Jake is a production of Dan Patrick Productions, John Boy Media, and Workhouse Media.